How did you get to New York City?
Well, I've lived here about 10 years, and you know what this is? I did some failed New York City excursions. I lived here from 08 to 09 at Roosevelt Island, which is a place like no one knows anything about. And then I just was like, I'm not ready yet. I went back home for another 2 years, and then I came back for good. So it was a nice test in the waters a little bit. I also lived in the Bronx for a summer in college.
Okay.
So I'm really getting all over the place in New York.
I know you're from Buffalo.
Yeah.
Were you always Mr. Comedian, class clown? What's the story of your upbringing?
Very rarely. I feel like most comedians kind of aren't, which surprises some people. But I feel like those people, they're getting it out in that class clowny way. And the other people are more like, they need to get it out on stage, So I had moments, but not really. I think most of the people from grade school, high school, college were kind of shocked that I did stand up.
You told me you went to UB.
I went to UB, yes.
When did you first try out stand up comedy?
It was I think I was 20, so maybe sophomore year of college, and just kind of always, it was on all of the time. Comedy Central was just, they didn't even have programming. It was South Park, stand-up, and old SNL episodes. That was on 24/7. So I just watched a lot of stand-up, liked it, saw an opportunity to try it, and then just kind of, fell in love with it.
Was that a big build-up to you actually doing it? Had you wanted to try for a long time?
A little bit, but it was more a little more on a lark. Me and a friend were like, okay, this could be fun to do. There was a class. So we're like, we'll take the class, and that'll just be a fun thing to do. We'll meet people, and we'll see if we like this, and he's since, gone on to have a real adult job. I'm still doing this.
I don't know what you remember about that first experience, but I'd love to hear about it.
First experience was surprisingly decent. So we had a big graduation show, and I think the reason why, sometimes comics will poo-poo classes, but it was a good experience because it's very, you're not thrown to the wolves. A lot of times when you start anything, but especially stand-up, you do open mics, which are oftentimes the worst.
Yeah.
And you're just really set up to fail. And this is a show where people, it's 8 people doing stand-up for the first time. They have all their friends and family come out. People know that you're doing it for the first time, so they're going to give it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's just really the easiest atmosphere you'll ever perform in front of. Even still, there'll be times at these shows, they'll have an experienced comic close out the show. And it's the best spot in the world because you've gone after people that could barely do sentences on stage, and then they'll see a professional. They're like, "Oh wow!" So it's if you go up there and you just kind of show any semblance of you might know what you're doing, you kind of get people are like, "Oh, okay, that was something," So it was actually a good start, and then then the real kind of pain and journey begins. But the first time was pretty easy.
Where did you perform?
It's a place called Comics Cafe. Doesn't exist anymore, but it was a hole in the wall type place. 5 minutes from where I grew up, but it was a different time too. Stand-up's kind of known now, it's a little cool, and back then no one. It was more underground. Right now you go to Buffalo, there's 100 people that think they're stand-ups, and when I started there was 7.
Wow.
So it's a much different atmosphere to start in.
Your interest in comedy initially, is that mostly as a fan?
Yes.
Who did you like, and how did they influence you?
A little bit of everyone. My number one was Mitch Hedberg.
Oh yeah.
But that was a great thing too about, I guess, I'm sure kids still have it to an extent today, but you're kind of just, you only have so many options back then. How old are you?
41.
Okay, I'm 40.
Okay.
So when I put, I said, I put on Comedy Central and just well, I'm going to watch whatever comedian they give me, because I can't bring out my phone and watch anything else.
Yeah.
You had different channels on cable, obviously, but if you're oh, I'm going to watch comedy, well, I'll watch whatever the comedy channel tells me is comedy.
Yeah.
So you kind of, but it was nice because you were forced to be like, you know, do I like this? Do I like this? You're kind of forced out of your preconceived notions. So you could watch a little bit of everything. You watch a little bit of Chris Rock or Maria Bamford or Attell or, you know, like all these people. And like you could throw those all in your mind and get kind of influenced by all of them, which is nice. I feel like a lot of people, you know, the algorithm wants to give you just the things you like.
Yes.
And it's nice to, at that time, being like, you're kind of forced to see everything.
Yeah, some diversity.
Yeah.
You said Hedberg was your favorite?
Hedberg was my favorite.
What did you like about him? I'm not sure most people who listen to this will necessarily know that much about him. I'd love for you to tell.
He's so great. He was, I mean, I'm a joke person. You know, I'm not anti anything else, but I like a good observation, a little chunk as a, you know, some stuff about you, but I'm not really like storytelling or absurdist. I kind of like more that realm. And he was so unique, but he was so like, I mean, it was just so impressive. Now, supposedly the big story is his Comedy Central Presents, which went for that time viral. It went, like did really well for him. And it was all sweetened. He bombed the whole time. So if you see, they have it on YouTube. I remember he put it with when his second album came out, he had a DVD of it and you could watch the original recording and it was just him like not doing well. And you know, they're like, well, we got to air this, and they added laughs to it. They put it on Comedy Central, and it like made his career. And like that part of it is so fascinating too. You know, like I remember being into like Norm Macdonald was really big, but it's so fascinating because you'd see his weekend updates, and some of them wouldn't work, and that like fascinated me too as a kid of like, you know, some stuff I thought was great, some stuff, you know, like any jokes, you know, they're not all going to hit, but it's like, oh, this is live TV. And there are times that like the audience would not even like fake give it up for him. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like he's really kind of being himself and going for it. And, you know, the same way with Mitch Hedberg. It's just like really, and like no one still writes jokes like that, you know?
When you say bomb, it's that he's not getting any positive feedback from the audience.
Yeah.
So it's crickets.
Pretty much.
And they put in the laugh tracks afterwards that made it sound like he was killing.
Yeah. But it's funny because like you almost think of that as a cheat, and to an extent it is, but like you know, once people at a mass level got to see him and see how good he was, like all those jokes do work, which kind of goes to show you like, so I stand up so interesting because like I could do a set, it could kill at the same location. Those people could leave, other people could come in. I do the exact same set and it bombs. And it's like, neither side is really wrong, but like it's almost like a batting average. Like they always say you get into the Hall of Fame if you hit 300. It's 3 out of 10, you know? And like stand up has a similar thing of like, even if a joke you think is flawless, you're going to find an audience that's like, oh, we don't like that. You know?
What have you found, if anything, about what makes a crowd more likely to be in that 3 out of 10? Is it liquor? Is it time of day? Is it city? What do you think? It's pretty
random. I mean, there are some like general patterns, like the later at night, the more variance there is. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean bad. Like you could have, I mean, I had a show last night. I went on at 1 a.m. and it felt like they were like electric. But like you also, you know, I was talking with comics. It's like two comics after me could bomb because the tiredness creeps up with them. Yeah. You know, same room, but same people. Yeah. And they could just be like, we're starting to get tired now. It's 1:30 and we're like, we've laughed for a long time and we're about ready to be done, you know? So there's a lot of just, you know, it could be anything. It could be the time you go on in the show, how well the comic does before you. And even in that, like if you follow a bad comic, sometimes it's great because they're like, oh, thank God. We were worried that whole show was going to be bad. Yeah. And sometimes you follow a good comic and you're like able to, sometimes you can't follow them because they took all the laughter out of the room and people need to relax for a second, you know? So but sometimes it works the opposite way, you know?
In terms of your mentality now, do you approach a set like a batter would approach facing a professional pitcher? That if you do hit 300, or 350 or 400, you regard yourself as a pro? Or is it a little bit, is that analogy not?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, different comedians have different points of view, obviously, but I have a feeling that if you're consider yourself good at it, you should be hitting kind of like doubles in most. No one could hit 100%, but you should be like, that wasn't my crowd, but I did all right, you know? And that's the funny thing. And the thing I love about stand-up is other artists, for the most part, aren't forced to do their art for everyone, which I kind of love about stand-up. You know, you put out a movie, the people that want to see that movie are going to see that movie. You even if you're a singer, or a band, you'll do different venues, but like, if you're a rock band, you're not going to perform for rap fans necessarily. And there's something about stand-up that, like, you know, you'll perform in a Brooklyn basement, or you'll perform for tourists, or you'll go to an all-black room if you're a white guy, or you'll go to, like, you know, the West Coast, you'll go to Canada, you'll kind of perform for everyone. And because of that, you know, it's tough. It's a tough balancing act, because if you kind of kill all the time for everyone, maybe that's too middle of the road.
Yeah.
But you should also be able to do okay for everyone, because you don't want to be too niche. You don't want to be up there being like, oh, I have this killer chunk about WrestleMania, and it doesn't work for people that are like, I don't give a fuck about that. You know, like, you want to find a way to make that work for other people too, you know? So it's a fun balancing act.
So there's the ambiguity of the kind of crowd you're walking into, and what kind of mood, or there's just a mystery to that to some degree.
Yeah.
For yourself, are there things you've noticed help you be at your best when you take the mic? Like, I don't know how routinized or habit driven you are, but to get yourself in a place where that part maybe you have a little bit more control of. Than what you're walking into.
There's maybe a little bit where it's like, hey, if it's late at night, I'll maybe keep the energy up. I'll kind of do things of like, kind of joking things like, left side, are you paying attention to me? You'll kind of like do some stuff to kind of get their attention. So there's small things like that, but also I think you realize the longer you do it, you only have so much, you know, like you just kind of are who you are at a certain point. And like anything, a lot of things you could do might only change at 5% in either direction, you know, like, you have like little tricks in different types of rooms, but beyond that, it's kind of like, well, if they don't like me for the first 5 minutes, it's not going to be like, well, now I'll do the dog joke, and that's going to turn everything around. It's just kind of like, these are the jokes. This is how I tell them. You're either going to like me or not like me at a certain point, and you just kind of got to make peace with it, you know?
I want to go back to when you first started doing this. Did you know fairly quickly, maybe even on your first attempt, that this was sort of a calling, something you really were interested in? Did that take a while, or was that fairly immediate?
For me, I would say it's a little bit in the middle. Like, I knew I liked doing it, but you also don't know if there's any way that you can do it for a way where you could kind of make money off of it. Yeah. So that was kind of a learning point of like, okay, let me get my degrees in college, so I have that to fall back on in case, and then I'll kind of go for it and see what happens. And then sometimes you just wonder, like, I make a decent enough living, but you know, you have that weird thing in the back of your mind where you're like, well, I guess technically I could always get a job. People do that. You have connections. You could go to a trade school or something. You know, you could find a way to make it work. But you also hit an age where you're like, well, I've been doing this such a long time that, like, as long as I can, you know, squeak it out, you know, there's value in that. There's a great Bill Burr quote, and I'm sure I'll ruin it a little bit, but he's kind of like, people think that it's a risk kind of going after a dream. And he's like, but really the risk is like not going after the dream, because like, what are you going to be 50 getting ready to wake up for a job you hate next to a lady who you're only okay with, and you know, like, that's way more of the risk than the person who's sleeping on their futon going to do something they like, just squeaking by. Like,
they have hope.
exactly.
So you graduate from UB. Did you go for this right away? Did you take a job for a while? What's that story?
I mean, I had a lot of day jobs. I did it in Buffalo for a while, probably just trying to get better, probably delaying the move, maybe even longer than I should have. But there is something that like, it's very rare the person who's like a couple years into anything, much less stand up, kind of going to New York, be like, I'm ready. And it's like, no, you need like longer than you think. You know, it's the Malcolm Gladwell, however many hours, you just need to put in that work.
Yeah.
And in Buffalo, I'm like, well, there's no one, I'm not embarrassing myself in front of anyone. I'll kind of learn all the different rooms. I'll do stuff on the road. You get longer sets and like really kind of build up the muscles of that, and I know what I'm doing. So you could kind of hit the ground running when you move to the New York, the big city. Yeah. Because the worst mistake you could kind of make in anything is thinking you're ready for the big leagues when you're not. Because the big league people don't have time to be like, this is how you hold the bat.
Yeah.
You got to come in kind of knowing how to do all that shit, you know?
The basics.
Exactly.
You said you moved here in 08 initially?
Yeah, for about a year.
On Roosevelt Island. 08 was the major recession year.
Right. Which so that hurt in and of itself. And like, I didn't really, I had like a side job that wasn't really giving me much, and it was more just like, okay, this is how New York City works, and you know, spend some of my money, then I could go back to Buffalo, get a bank account going, you know, learn from my mistakes, and then come back a little bit more ready.
Was the goal or the dream or the determination to stay with stand-up still there even when you left New York to go back home?
Yeah. And in fact, it helped a lot because I learned lessons from New York, both the city and the stand-up here. And then I was able to go back to Buffalo and like be like, okay, do I really like this? Do I really want to go for it? Because, you know, New York kicks your ass in a lot of different ways. And it's just kind of like, okay, no, I do like this. And here's the lessons I learned from that. And I could apply it and kind of get better and then be ready when I come back.
What did you learn?
Small and big stuff. How to live in a big city. That kind of just takes a while, you know. But then in stand-up, there's a different... And New York, you kind of got to be quicker, punchier. I think you get a little more leeway out in the rest of the country because you're doing longer spots. The people on the show necessarily aren't as good as you. So when you come here, you get less time and everyone's good. So like, you know, your B-level jokes don't stand out as much. You got to make those B-level more into A's. And the A's got to become A pluses. So you just got to kind of like do the work to make sure you're good enough to compete, you know, with everyone around you. If you run a mile in your gym class and you're like, oh, well, these people, you know, like you seem fast because it's around a lot of people that don't run. But if you're running with people that run, you know, all of a sudden you're like, oh, goddamn. You know?
So going back to Buffalo was a way to cut your teeth even more and get more reps in and improve.
Yeah.
With the eventual plan of coming back here.
Yeah, exactly.
And how long did that take? How long were you in Buffalo?
I think I was there for like 2-3 years. Okay. Because I was able to build up a bank account. So I kind of knew the type of money I needed, you know, when I'd come back. I knew the type of living situation I would want. Like when I lived here for a year, I didn't have a room. It was one of those things where I lived, me and two guys, they had the rooms and I lived in the family room with like a curtain.
Been there, for sure.
With a curtain. Yeah. And you're like, okay, this is fine, but I want to make sure I have the money where I have at least a room. Yeah. You know, even if it's, exactly. So like you figure out even just obvious kind of stuff like that where you could get by doing that for a year. But, you know, sometimes that's a problem people have is they move to New York too quick. They do the family room thing, and then they're like, oh, I'm ready to move on. But they wasted all their money on the family room situation, you know? So it's like, I kind of wanted to come with like a nice bank account so I could, you know, get a room, and then you kind of look for a job that's able to, you know, keep you afloat.
Yeah. So the details, you go back to Buffalo, you're still working on your craft. You take a job as well. Yeah. Did you have a number in mind in terms of how much money you wanted to bank before you felt comfortable coming back?
I did, but it was, in looking back, I don't know if it was I either don't remember it or don't know if it was an exact amount. It was more like, I'll get I went to a temp job and then they put me at a bank and they liked me and I kind of got a job there. And I was like, okay, let's try and have this for 1 to 3 years, like somewhere in that range. And then I'll keep track on friends if they need a roommate. And I'll just kind of be relatively thrifty. I think I lived back with my parents at that time.
Yeah.
I think for 1 year I lived on my own. And then the other 2 years I lived back with my parents. And I was just like, be relatively thrifty, have a job, save money, and keep track on when I can move back in a good environment.
Yeah. Keep your eye on the long-term goal.
Yeah.
So roughly like $5,000. Did you want to have?
I think I had more than that.
More than that. Okay.
It was probably at least 10.
Okay.
Maybe even like 20.
Okay.
But it was just kind of, Buffalo's a cheap city, and just kind of like, hey, having meals with I was lucky. I had a place with my parents I could stay in and just like kind of be thrifty and just, keep it going.
When did you know, outside of the money component, it was time to come back?
It was a mix of everything. It was like a fix where I felt like I had enough good material again. I had a good place to live. Friends were moving there or were getting new places and were like, hey, we could use a new person. Rent's not too bad. So then I moved in Astoria and I was there for like probably 8 years. And it was like lived with friends. And when they moved, the apartment was good enough that it was easy to get people to fill out the rooms that became available. So it was like a good situation. So that's the thing too. Like if you move to a city for art, you want some stability.
Yeah.
You want either a relationship stability or a living situation stability. You don't want to be unmoored from everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's a thing people struggle with. It's like, well, I'll go to that city. I'll live in a basement with a shirtless 60-year-old man, and then I'll do art, and then I'll date. And you're like, man, you don't have anything keeping you to like some sense of normalcy, and you just need this, even if it's just a place that's relatively solid that you could afford, that you don't hate, like that goes a long way to. You don't want everything kind of unmoored. Yeah.
That kind of story, I think, is often glorified as being something desirable, but a lot of things in life are better theoretically than in practice.
Well, of course, and you get why people lose their minds and quit, because it's like, no one can like live in a dumpster single with one friend and their art's falling apart and their day job stinks. Like you need at least one or two things kind of going your way.
Yeah.
Like just a foundation, Yeah. It's like you don't need the decor in the house to be amazing, but if it's got a roof and walls and heat, you could like, okay, I could live with this. This is a good starting point, and then you go from there.
So you get back here, it sounds like you already had some contacts, people that you knew who were in the city.
Yeah, I had a couple of friends here, which is good. And then I had some comedians I knew. And that was another great thing of like moving back to Buffalo, especially Buffalo being so close to New York, where I would, at all the comedy clubs, I'd be like, I was at that point enough of a veteran that I could be like, hey, anytime a New York City comic comes, let me open. So then that way, when I moved to the city, there was like 12 people that I'm like, hey, remember me? I opened up for you. Like you had some contacts and you could kind of, it wasn't as scary.
Any people that you opened up for that you were really impressed by during that time who were here?
Definitely a lot of people. I mean, it's also crazy to think that like when the comedy club in Buffalo opened, which is, it's give or take 10 years now, the amount of, there's comics that work that club in Buffalo for, and probably sold well for 300 people, but they now do arenas.
Yeah.
Like in small clubs, I saw, Maniscalco and Bert Kreischer and John Mulaney and, like all these people that do, arenas and theaters now exclusively.
Yeah.
And obviously I didn't even meet most of those people, but I would be like, a Dan Soder who I work with.
Yeah.
Sometimes I met in Rochester, or like Mark Norman, people like that, and varying other people that just kind of met on the road. Which was obviously very helpful.
When you got back here, did you already have work set up for yourself? Did you have to get here and hustle to get gigs? What do you
you kind of, you really, I mean, New York's, there's kind of different levels. When you first move here, it's just like, it's a grind. It's like trying to do bar shows, trying to meet new friends, doing open mics. And then hopefully you get to a level where you at least get like, you know, some things become a little regular. You're like, all right, I have like 1 or 2 shows a month that are on rotation that I could kind of depend on. But even still, it's like small. And then hopefully you get to a point where you get kind of past at a club and you get something that's a little more regular. Like for me, it was the Comedy Cellar, which is, I mean, the best club in the world, but like kind of getting past there, it's like, okay, I could, you know, it's always up and down because there's so many comics, but there's a level of like, okay, I'll probably get X amount of shows and I can meet all these new comics and I have some kind of money coming in I can depend on, and you get a little bit more of a stability. But for a while there, it's like really touch and go. And it remains that way for a lot of comics. So you need like, I babysitted for a while. You need just some job that you could be like, okay, I got some money coming in. This doesn't really affect my nightlife too much, so I could still go out and, you know, you get a good mix going in.
How many years into you being back in New York did you get past at the Comedy Cellar?
I think it was like 6.
6 years here grinding away until that happened.
Yeah.
Was that your eventual goal? Was that at least one of your major hopes?
Yeah, that was a main goal because, like I said, it gives you some stability. I mean, not only is the club amazing, but like gives you some stability. You meet a lot of new comics, so you kind of feel like a working professional. They treat you, they look at you as that, and then like, yeah, that gives you a nice kind of like base.
Between year 0 and 6, where else were you working? What's the scene look like there?
It's a lot. I mean, it's kind of just like you're throwing Hail Marys and like, you know, some months and years are better than others, you know, but it is, I mean, there were years where you'd look at your tax form and you're like, oh, I made so little that it's like, you'd look up like what's considered like, you know, poverty. And you'd be like, yeah. And you know, it'd be like, thank God I have a apartment that's not too bad, or that I have like the occasional friend that's like, I'll get lunch here. Because it'd be, you know, years where you'd make under, you know, 20 grand, you know, and you just like, you're in your mind, you'd be like, okay, X amount of that's rent, X amount of this is this and this. And like, you know, you'd find some of those jobs where like the babysitting wasn't, you know, you could keep that off the books to an extent. And you'd find like different, I did background extraing work for a while.
What is that?
So like, you know, in movies and TV.
Okay, sure.
Where you're just the person who's walking in the background. And like, so I do that in babysitting. And that was like enough to keep me afloat, those 2 in comedy. But it was like, you know, it would still be tight, but you'd be doing those 3 things. And like, you know, the background thing would be like, you'd go for $100 all day, but like you'd get 2 meals and then you'd be like, okay, that's okay for the day, you know, like, but it was a lot of hustling, and you really got to like it because it'll kick your ass, you know?
That was my next question. What kept you at it, given most people can't endure years of $20,000 a year in New York City or anywhere?
Yeah.
What about the experience in comedy kept you in it?
Well, one thing I kind of realized, I kind of said to myself one day is, I know that I like it enough that I'll never stop doing it. Now, there might come a point where the money doesn't make sense and you got to get another job. But I also realized that like, if I became a plumber or something, I would still be like, oh, that's a pretty good thought about donuts. I'll go to I'll see if someone will put me up over the weekend. I'll do the donut. But like, I kind of just know that's just in me. And there is a bit of freedom with that, of like, I know I'm never going to stop doing that. I'm always going to have that in me. And that's no matter what. If I won $1 million, I would still be like, I still want to try this new chunk out that I'm working. So there is freedom in knowing that this is kind of just what I do now. And if at any point the money situation's not good, I'll have to have conversations about doing other things, but it is freeing knowing that I'll still always be doing that, you know, as part of my life.
There's freedom in the clarity of that.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to realize that, to have that clarity?
I don't know, because at a certain point, you're kind of just, you know, it like, you ever been in a relationship where you're like, I want this to work, but I kind of know it's not, but you're lying to yourself a little bit because you don't want to have the hard conversations to break it off. And there's like a similar thing with that where people have with a lot of art. Like there's a lot of people I see where I go like, I think you're hanging on and you don't really like this, or you're doing this because you've always done this. And you should probably have that hard conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're younger, you just do something to do something. It's a fun thing to do. Yeah. You're not really thinking about your 401k or whatever the hell, you know? But then you reach a certain point where you're getting older. Yeah, I think it's friends around you start making more money. They start getting married, start having kids. And you're like, oh, what does my future look like? And you kind of started, asking yourself tough questions. And I think one of them was like, well, I think I'm never going to stop doing the work of it, which is good to know. But, you know, you never know. There could be, you know, a recession could come and you might be like, well, I need to get a day job. But I at least know that it'll be a day job and I'll be doing comedy, you know?
What about it do you enjoy so much?
I like, it's kind of instant creativity, which is I could think of something today, say it on stage, and like, man, I guess other art forms have that to a certain extent, but you always think like, if you're an actor, it's other people are responsible for giving you the role. And then you do the role and you got to wait a year for it to come out. And does anyone see it? And I kind of know instantaneously, I'm going to walk in a room, there's going to be X amount of people there, and I could say the thing and they could tell me if it's good or not. And so like, there's that to it. And you just get to constantly like do new things, you know, you get to travel, which is great. So yeah, there's just a lot to like about it.
Were you ever close, given the sacrifices, to quitting? It doesn't sound like it.
I don't think so. There was possible instances where my life would have to be reworked in certain ways, but it's like even a thing, it's like, well, if I ever moved back to Buffalo, I would still do it. I wouldn't probably do it as much. I'd be more an amateur level than a professional level. Yeah. But I think there's clarity, and it almost helps you push more knowing that you'll never stop doing it, you know?
Is it simple enough to say that there's the pre-Comedy Cellar passing you and post? Is that a big enough moment for your life and career?
I think so. There's probably a couple moments. There's kind of like doing it at open mics, you know. I'm trying to think of how many there'd be, but there's probably doing it at open mics and then being like, oh, people are willing to pay me. Like once you start getting paid semi-regularly, you're like, okay, that's like people are trusting me to pay me money to perform for people. So then you get that. And then I think you get moving to a bigger scene and kind of realizing you could kind of hang with the other people that you see on shows. And then I think there's kind of getting to a level where you're being taken out on the road with people, you know, like, and then getting passed at clubs. So I think there's a couple levels you kind of jump throughout the course of a career that you kind of feel good about.
I'd love to hear the story about how you got passed at the Comedy Cellar. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I had opened up for Mark Normand a bunch, who's helped me out in a bunch of ways, and then and I think a couple other comics. Sometimes it's very mysterious, but I think he put in a good word. I think a couple other comics were like, yeah, he's solid, give him a shot. And then getting an audition, really, I don't want to say isn't the hard part, because it is hard, but there's getting the audition is part one. Then part two is doing well at the audition, which is also hard, but it's also an amazing comedy club. And you're going up, you're doing the best 5 minutes you've ever written in your life. Yeah. And a lot of people get passed because it's like, you know, they kind of set you up to succeed, which, you know, I went after Colin Quinn, which was very nerve-wracking because he's so good.
That's right, because you go into the middle of a live show.
Yes, exactly. Which is a great way to do it, because other clubs, sometimes it's a bit more like, hey, this is a show of a bunch of people trying to get past, and you're like, well, that's not really set like it's nerve-wracking, but you are setting up to succeed. You know, they're putting you, it's a sold out show. It's, you know, you're going after someone who's good. Like you're kind of set up to do well.
Yeah.
And then there's the third part, which is the toughest part, is once you get past, they give you a ton of spots. So like not always, but if you like look at their lineups and you see someone you don't know and you're like, wow, they have like 20 spots this week. Normally that's someone that just got passed, and they're kind of testing you. They're like, can you go on, you know, after Colin Quinn at 6:30 on a Friday? Can you go up at the end of a show at 9 p.m.? Can you go up first at 1 a.m.? And they're kind of testing you, and you know, and there are some comics that are generally better in one area than another, and there are comics that, like, you know, we've kind of given you 15 spots all over the lineup, and it was only okay. So maybe we're going to give you less spots going forward. That's the thing, is because, you know, the audition is 5 minutes, but the sets are 15. So you got to be doing 15, and you have to go after killers. You have to go at the beginning of sets, end of sets, middle of the night, or, you know, right at dinner time, and they're kind of checking you to see what you can do. And that's the real kind of audition.
So there's the esteem of the Comedy Cellar. There's the work that you might have coming your way or will have coming your way. What else does that provide to a young comic who just got passed at the Cellar, if anything?
I mean, those are obviously two big ones, but there is just a little bit of like, you know, there's the feeling like you made it. Like maybe anything could go away at any time, and I'm sure, like, you know, you haven't really made it, but there's a thing of like, oh, I'm around like working professionals, people that have done this for years, or people that are like, you know, really hot right now, and we're all on the same show, and we're, you know, like we're talking as equals. And then there's just the prestige of being at the club, which is, you know, the best club in the world. And so there's a lot that kind of comes with it financially, just feeling good about yourself and being around other like-minded professionals, you know? Yeah.
I still feel like, as a fan, the best value for entertainment in New York is going to one of those shows. Yeah,
and I sometimes I'll like, you know, because they have the price up, especially at the McDougal location, and you're looking, you'll be like, oh, this is a good deal. And like, you kind of like are amazed sometimes, because I think it's like, depending on the night, I think it's like $16 to $20, and you go like, and yeah, but like you go there, you get like chicken wings and a beer, and like just for you, that's like, and tip, that's like $50, but like, I don't know, like everything else is way more expensive, and you get a meal and to see the best comics in the world. And like, if you go with a date, it's about $100, and you're like, I don't know, Broadway's more expensive, and you don't get food, you know, like, or a drink with that, you know, like, and there's not many things you could, I mean, even you go to see a movie and it's $20, and, you know, I you know, I think it's different and more, you know, in your face than a movie, and it's a similar price point.
Yeah. I don't know if anything comes to mind, but I'm sure in addition to being around all these comics, you're also learning from some of the best comics in the world.
Yes, that's another thing, just being around, you know, what
did you learn from them, or what stands out, if anything, about?
I mean, there's kind of like, at that level, it's maybe like more small things, but it's just good to watch people in their environments of like, you get to see kind of special things too, where like, I remember I was supposed to go up next, and Chris Rock showed up, and they're like, "Oh, we're putting up Chris Rock," and I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And then it's great because, you know, they're so professional there; they pay you no matter what. So they gave me my money, and then they're like, we don't know how much time he wants to do. So if he does like less than 30, you'll go up after him, and then if he does more time, we'll probably just call the show with him. And so he did longer time. I just got paid to watch Chris Rock, but like, it was nerve wracking because you didn't know if you'd have to go up after him. But like, you know, you get to see some of the greats like working on new, which is like, you only see these people when they're like murdering, and you get to see them go through the process of like being like, is there anything here with with this? And you're like, oh, that's kind of crazy to see. Or you get to even just seeing like, you know, really good art can't help but inspire you. So I always stay like Dave Attell, I think, is the world's funniest comic, and he does a lot of the late shows, which I do a lot of these late shows too. And I always just stay and I'll watch him close, because you just get to see, you're like, wow, what a great joke. And you just kind of remember little things of like, you know, I was on a podcast with him, and it's so small, and people might not think this is anything, but like on the podcast, they have a bar and they're giving people drinks, and they go, the bartender goes, Dave, do you want anything? He's like, I'll take a grilled cheese. And it's just like so naturally funny. And you go like, it's so quickly of like the mind of like someone who's really quick like that is just like, okay, what could I say that's not a drink? What's a funny food that I could say, you know, like, and it's so small, but like you kind of, those instincts that are just so sharp, kind of always ready with like a line. And he the thing I've learned from him that's so smart is he has 1,000 different lines for 1,000 different scenarios. Like, I'm trying to think of, you know, like if a bunch of people are talking, and he'll just kind of have things of like, what's going on over here? Is this a job fair we're all at now? Like, he'll just have like little lines that he has prepared in case something happens. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, that's so next level, because most people are stuck just doing their set, you know, and how to make their set better. And he's so kind of thinking of like, oh, if this person's not laughing, I have a line for someone who's stone facing me, or I have a line for someone who's talking, or I have a line when the whole crowd's talking, and I have a, you know, like he kind of is so in the zone and so prepared that and he almost doesn't have to. He's so good he doesn't have to, but that's, you know, how, you know, 3D chess, he's thinking it through.
It makes it seem like he's thinking it off the top of his head.
Yeah.
But that's just pure mastery.
Yes.
It sounds like, of just being able to have a line for he's completely prepared for almost anything.
100%. Yeah. And he's always a person, I love his as a comedy nerd, his word usage is so precise. Like, I remember there was the host of the show was wearing a puffy vest coat, you know, one of those puffy vest coats. And he pointed at him and he's like, now, James, you look like you park cars at the Barclays Center. And I was just like, I was dying, because like no other, like a lesser comic would have said like, you look like a parking attendant. Yes. You know, like, but like, you look like you park cars at the Barclays Center. There's like a comedy poetry to it that like not everyone might even like get, but it's so specific I mean, there's so many of those he has that I'm like, wow, that was really, really something special there. You know?
He's like a machine gun.
Yeah.
The guy is, I mean, he's one of the fastest comedians I've ever seen live.
Yeah. There's a clip, I was watching some clips of him. He was on a panel show, and a bunch of comics, they were talking about something maybe like the war in Iraq, and they were getting like almost too granular for a comedy show. And he just goes, guys, if you keep this up, they're gonna put us on the cover of Yawn magazine. and like just so funny to be like, what's a funny way to recenter this on comedy in a way that's like, you know, like polite, but still like there's a little punch to it. And it's like, it's so impressive. You know, I always think he has a great moment, not to just make this whole special about how good he is, but he has a moment in his Netflix special where someone has a mask on, a COVID mask, and he points to them and he goes, "Mask, that's smart. We need someone to tell our tale." He's like, in case things go wrong tonight, we need someone to tell the story of what happened here. And like, it's just so smart to me, because a lesser comic would like, they notice something's amok and they'd maybe pick on that person. And he finds the person, but makes them seem like they're smart and everyone else seem like they're dumb, but still gets everyone laughing. And I'm like, wow, what a smart way to kind of do that. Yeah. You know? And
says the opposite of probably what everyone is expecting to say about that person.
The opposite while making everyone laugh.
Yes.
Which is like the real mastery of that. Because a lesser comic would say either the obvious or the opposite, because it's easy to do both, right? It's either to be like, oh, I'll take the opposite. I'll seem like a bad boy, or I'll seem like a lot of comics do that these days. They'll say the opposite of what everyone's thinking, but it's more like, it's more to get the reaction. Yeah. Ooh, but he's able to do the opposite and be funny with the opposite is like, that's what's really impressive.
The world-class comedians, I mean, you just mentioned two of them, Chris Rock and Dave Attell. Is there anything, and some of the other guys you mentioned too, I would argue are world-class comedians too, that you notice about them in their preparation, in their lifestyles that you've tried to pluck to make yourself better? Is there anything worth commenting on?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, there is just kind of like the work ethic. I think being prepared is, everyone works in different ways, but just kind of being prepared and putting the work in, because it's very easy to not. It's very easy to just be like, not write new jokes or not, like I was saying, be prepared for stuff that happens in the room. And so I think just... there's a little bit of that, of just like, you got to put in the work. That's why you see a lot of like actors or TikTok people, they'll do stand up and like people be like, oh, that person, they were okay. And you're like, well, yeah, they didn't put in, this guy you didn't know put in fucking 10,000 hours in this 30 minutes. And that person just had some writers and kind of start, and it's just really putting in that work.
So you got past the Comedy Cellar, you said 6 years after you came back.
Yes, so roughly, yeah.
That was pre-COVID, post-COVID?
Right after COVID. It was fall 2021.
What did you do with your career after that? So you had this momentous shift and an incredible success for you. Did you tour more? Did you kind of stay here and work the Cellar?
A little bit. I mean, you get some opportunities for it, but it's also like every little benchmark that I was talking about, it helps, but it's not like... oh, now it's, it's kind of not like the scary thing about any artistic pursuit is, unlike most jobs, there isn't that cushy floor, if you have an accounting job, you have what you're going to make a year and you could slowly work your way up the ladder. And even if you don't get the promotion, well, you still have this job that you're making this amount of money. And comedy, that kind of, you could get less spots. You could start sucking, you could, it's so you give yourself some breathing room. You're always giving yourself a little more breathing room, but you also are still, it can still go away, so you kind of being just ready to, you're still pushing,
I don't know if there was a point where financially you remember a noticeable shift from like, damn, am I at the poverty level to like, I'm not having $1 million, but I'm comfortable. Like the stress of being able to pay your bills disappeared. I don't know if that was the Cellar getting past,
so that
or some
helped a lot.
time.
And even just like, going back to my earlier conversation of having other stuff going on, like, I got engaged, and not that I'm sponging off the lady by any means, but it is good to have a partner that like has a regular job. Yeah. And if I'm going to have good times and I'm going to have down times, and there's, now again, that's like, oh, in the past 5 years, I haven't been worried about like rent or anything like that. So there hasn't really been like that, that level of poverty coming back to me. But, that also helps of like, you have a friend group, you have a place that you stay at where the rent's going to be stable. You have a partner that you could kind of depend on for stuff, like all that stuff kind of plays into that too.
Do you, for comedy, for people like who have been doing this for 10 years, and when you're thinking about the future, are there revenue streams? Like what are the ways comedians can continue to make more money? I'm sure you think about this and talk about this a lot. Like, what are those paths?
Well, I mean, there's getting some bump. Nowadays, it's a lot of social media, which is both good and bad. But then, you get more fans, and you're able to tour and able to make more money. There's opening up for comics, which is what I do a lot at this point right now, because I don't have that huge fan base yet. There's kind of just like, a lot of comics have podcasts because they're able to like, they got their YouTube monetized, so they're able to put it on that, or they're able to do Patreons or ads on the podcast and, stuff like that. So there are different ways like that I even probably have to be better at of just getting more, revenue streams. Because a lot of things too with artists is you want like 10 balls in the air, and it's like, if I catch 3 of them, that's a good year.
Yeah.
And I have like little things I do too that like, I'm a big trivia person. So I actually host, it started during the pandemic, but I actually host a Zoom trivia league. So I do that twice a year where I write my own questions, and I have like kind of 5 diehard teams, and I have more joining all the time and we just play like online trivia for a night. And then I do that for 8 weeks, like twice a year. And there's like little things like that. That's just like, I don't make a killing during that, but just like extra little income streams that you have kind of going on of stuff that I like doing anyway.
Yeah. You mentioned Attell, you mentioned Rock. In your mind, who are the great comedians that are practicing right now? When you see them, you just hold them in such high regard for their talent, their work ethic. What names come to mind?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Attell is especially someone because I see him at the Cellar a lot late nights, so I'm able to kind of watch him. But there's definitely in a comedy boom. So there's a lot of great people. I opened for like a Mark Norman, Dan Soder, that are just like kind of crushing their new hours, and just so many people, funny people in the city that it's great to see. And sometimes you'll even kind of catch yourself where you go like, oh, I think this person's okay, and you're like, oh, they've been like. You'll see like, man, they're working at it, which is always a nice little surprise too. So I mean, there's a lot of, you go down the lineup of Cellar, New York Comedy Club, a lot of those places where you're just like, oh, there's a lot of like good comics out there,
I always like to close with the same question, which is about how guests think about success. And I mean, you've had an incredible arc to where you are now.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about the future and income streams and what else you might want to do. When you think about the word success as it applies to your life and career specifically, what does that look like? If we were to talk in a year or 3 years, what in your mind makes a successful career for you?
Well, in a perfect world, you always kind of want to be going up, getting a little more fans, a little more money. But I've tried to do my best. It's not always easy to kind of kill the ego involved with it.
Yeah.
Because to me, a goal is if I die and I never had to work in an insurance. Do you know what I'm saying? Where it's just like a thing of like, oh, I got to travel the world telling jokes. A decent amount of people thought I was funny, and I got to sleep in every day. Yeah. And I got like, to me, that's the win. Like, I don't necessarily need to be the theater guy. I don't even know if I want to be the theater guy. I don't need to be in movies. I'm just like, if I can kind of do it and have enough that I could, go to dinner and like see my bank account and not sweat, and like that to me is a success. I don't need to be, I was just telling a buddy, I'm sure I'll not get the quote correctly, but there's a great quote from Citizen Kane where he says like, it's not hard to make a lot of money if all you want to do is make a lot of money. So like, if your goal is to just make money, like you could rob bank, you could make bombs, you could do a lot of things, but like, so to me, it's just like, I just need to do if I like doing the thing and I'm able to have a roof over my head and it's not too embarrassing of a roof, and I'm able to afford food and I'm not sweating, that to me is the win.
Having a career in the art you love.
Yes. Because how many people get to do that? Yeah. So it's like, a lot of people will, lose sleep because they're not the 1% or they're not even in the 10%. But like, if you're able to kind of survive, I mean, if I'm, especially post-pandemic, I've been able to survive without a day job. If I'm able to keep that going, like, I mean, and even if you throw a day job in there, and it's something that's not too bad and it's part-time, it's like, I don't know, if I'm able to survive that, isn't that better than the person who's doing 9 to 5 and kind of rolling their eyes and they're tired every night and they hate it and they're like,
It's the 1% life.
Yeah.
Or it's the 1% life for you.
Exactly.
I want to sneak in one last question because I know you say you travel a lot. What are the great stand-up venues in the country? I don't know if any stand out to you as being if someone comes across this and they're in that city or going to that city, what comes to mind?
Some that come to mind, there's Comedy on State in Madison, Wisconsin.
I've been there.
Which is
I love that place.
It's a great, and they treat comics great. That's great. Hilarities in Cleveland is an awesome club. I'm trying to think of there's a bunch of great rooms, but there are those rooms that like go above and beyond. Obviously, we talked about the Comedy Cellars, next level. But there are some rooms like that are just kind of magic. When you're in that, they kind of built the room the right way. There's a couple heliums that are like that, like the Philly helium's good, the Portland helium's good, where it's just like the room is built so well, and when you get the right people in there and the right act, you're kind of like, oh, this is, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Shaun, thank you so much, man.
Oh, thank you for having me.